Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. I kind of made it seem, I guess, that the policy exam was going to be coming a little bit down the pipeline afterwards. No, it's right here, right now, today. So this is part of my 1000th daily ruling, and it is the level 2 practice exam, the policy section. So this is, I got this off of the Judge Foundry website. Which is the organization that certifies judges in the U.S. and Canada, where I live. Their exam is 25 questions from the comprehensive rules, which you can see my other video for that. And then there's 15 questions that are policy questions, which means the material comes from the Magic Tournament rules, Infraction Procedure Guide, and Judging at Regular Rel document. And that is this video today. The exam is meant to be taken closed documents, in other words, just based on what you got in your head, not based on your ability to look stuff up. But it's also untimed, and 80% is a passing score. And, there's one more thing that you should know, and that is that you can do it. I believe it. I really do believe that. Everybody who has the fire can learn this material, can study hard, and can pass even the level 2 exam. So yeah, you can do it. And here's a little bit of information that's going to be relevant when you're going through the questions that I prepared here. Card text is always assumed to be accurate in every way that affects the answer. Amy is the active player, the player whose turn it is. Nick is her opponent. There's no other players in the game unless stated otherwise in the question. No player has any cards that are relevant that aren't mentioned in the question. And this is new for the policy questions. So when a question says a player forgot to do something or they did it accidentally, those words refer to the judge's determination, not the player's accounts. And what that means for you is that it doesn't mean that the player said they forgot. It doesn't mean that the player said that they did it accidentally. It means that after talking to the players and investigating, the judge has determined that it was like that. So when you see those words, you can take them at face value for the player's intention. Obviously, in a real call, you would need to investigate to determine something like that. And also, all the questions here refer to competitive rel, unless noted otherwise in the question. So the rules can change, and the video that I put together here, it took a long time to put together, so I'm not reshooting it. Check the pinned comments for any errata. And with that, we're ready to start looking at some questions. And one last thing regarding the format here. I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to pause briefly, and then I'm going to tell you what the answer is. I'm not going to read the answer choices that you have. The video is going to be pretty long, even without me doing that. So I'm just going to read the question, pause, and then start talking about what the answer is. So if you would like to, take the question along at home, which I encourage you to do, go ahead and pause the video after I read the question, and then you can review the answer choices and come up with what you think the answer is. And remember, there's only one choice, or there's only one chance everybody gets to go through this video not knowing what all the answers are, right? So, while sideboarding an F&M draft, Nick calls for a judge and says he is missing a Badgermole Cub from his deck. He recalls that Amy, his last round opponent, used a Jet's Brainwashing on it in their last game, and he forgot to get it back afterwards. When you ask Amy about it, she apologizes and admits she realized that she had Nick's card, but her deck desperately needed more early drops, so she kept it. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? And so you can think about that for a while, and hopefully most people got that we were going to disqualify Amy from the event. I know it's F&M. I know it's kind of a laid-back atmosphere. It's we don't do a whole lot of penalties and stuff. Even at regular rel, stealing is wrong. All right? I know it. You know it. Amy knows it. I don't know what age I was at when I first came upon that piece of information, but it was a lot before I was able to understand stuff enough to be able to play Magic. I could understand that stealing was wrong. All right, so there's no way you could convince me that Amy did not know that she was supposed to give that card back to Nick. And that's like even putting aside the fact that like we're in the middle of a Magic event where it's like a card that Nick was using in his deck, right? But just like the idea is like Amy took a card that wasn't hers, and now she's playing it, and she knows it's not hers. So like even if this was like, and so it's Badgermole Cub. If you're watching this in the future, Badgermole Cub is worth like maybe $50 or so right now. This version of it, but even if this was a bulk common, we would still have the same situation. We'd still disqualify Amy from the event because stealing is wrong, and besides that, like playing cards that you didn't open in a draft is also wrong, and like anybody who's playing in a draft would know that too. So yeah. Now, some people were thinking maybe we would DQ Amy from the event and ban her from the store. Well, here's the thing: if you're a judge, that's not really your call to make. Who is or is not allowed to be in a store is a decision that the store's owner would make, not the judge. Obviously, some cases those are the same person, and I expect that in a lot of cases, an incident like this would result in Amy being banned from the store. But the actual penalty and fix that's like specified in Magic's policy documents is just disqualifying her. Not saying that the owner might have some additional penalties come down the pipe later, though. All right, so next up, Amy attacks with a Tarmogoyf at an F&M. While deciding whether or not to block, Nick asks how big it is. Amy's graveyard has a land and a sorcery. Nick's has a creature. Which of these are legal responses from Amy? And so, for those of you who don't know what a Tarmogoyf die is, it kind of looks like this. And there's different designs, but you can see there's like different. On the faces, it says like different power and toughnesses for the Tarmogoyf. So that's what the Tarmogoyf die is talking about in choice D there. So you can see the important thing to know about in this question is this is asking about information. All right, and in regular rel, which is what F&Ms are, creatures' power and toughness is free information. Right? And what that means is that your opponent is entitled to free information about your stuff without any contamination or omission. Okay? So we're definitely not allowed to lie and say that it's a 2/3, right? Like that would be no good. We do in fact have to tell Amy does in fact have to tell Nick. She cannot just tell him to figure it out for himself. This choice here, I see a sorcery and a land. That is incorrect. You are not allowed to say that at regular rel because you are supposed to provide this information without contamination or omission. And here, Amy is omitting a relevant fact, which is that there is also a creature. So sorcery and land, yes, but also creature. And maybe people are thinking, okay, well, what if Amy didn't realize that there was a creature, or like she didn't realize that it like counted Nick's stuff too? Well, hey, you know what? It is possible for you to break the rules and not know about it. That is a thing that can happen, and that is a thing that would happen in that situation. But like when I wrote this, and this is kind of hard to like get across in just text, my theory was that Amy was going to just be saying like, hey, there's this sorcery and a land. And like Amy realized that there would also be a creature. But even if she did not realize, that's still against the rules for her to say that. On the other hand, the Tarmor die is good, right? The Tarmor die, communication does not necessarily have to be verbal. A nonverbal communication is a thing too in Magic. And putting a Tarmor die with the appropriate face up would be a valid response. And calling for a judge is always a valid response. And maybe it might come out a little bit rude if you don't say anything to Nick, but you just like immediately call for a judge. Maybe a more polite way to do that would be say like, I'm gonna call a judge before I answer that, and then call a judge. But like that is a valid thing to do too. And there's reasons why you would want to do that. Like maybe it's a foreign language Tarmogoyf, and you forgot whether it counts your graveyard only or both players. Or maybe you don't know whether the adventure card counts as like just a creature or a creature and an instant both. So like there's valid reasons why you could call a judge for the answer for this one. It's not just if you're trying to be a smart aleck. But yeah, that's the answer. All right, so next up. It's the exact same question, except this time it is an RCQ, not an F&M. So same question, same answer choices. What do you think for an RCQ, which would of course be competitive rel in this case? And so the answer to this is, well, obviously like we're still gonna have like if it's valid and legal to do it at regular rel, it would definitely be acceptable for competitive rel too. But we also have a couple of extras. So like the way it works is in competitive rel, unlike regular rel, the power and toughness is not free information; it's derived information. Now, at regular rel, all derived information is considered free. So, that's a stronger, responsibility for the communication. At competitive rel, it's derived information. And what derived information is you are still not allowed to make inaccurate statements. So it's a 2-3 would still not be available. But you are able to legally make misleading or omit information. You can do that. And so what that means is you can refuse to answer. That is a valid thing that you could do at competitive rel. So B is a good, and C is also correct, because this statement is misleading, and it does contain an omission, but it is also accurate. There is a sorcery and there is a land, and the fact that there's some other stuff is true too, but maybe Nick won't realize that. So yes, this is the answer, what it would be at competitive rel. Alright, Amy draws for the turn, and then she realized that she skipped her Dark Confidant trigger. After investigating, the judge determines that this was a genuine mistake, and Amy simply forgot. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? So remember, we don't have any information about what rel this is taking place at, so we would assume, from that information that I told you earlier on the slide earlier, we'll assume that this is competitive rel if there's no information like that. So go ahead and think about the answer, and this is a mistrigger. Amy does not get a penalty because you only assign a warning for mistrigger in cases where the mistrigger is generally considered to be detrimental for its controller. Now, it's a fact that once your life total gets below a certain amount, your Dark Confidant triggers are going to start feeling detrimental to you, but it is not generally considered detrimental, and so Dark Confidant is not a detrimental trigger, so you would not get a warning for missing that trigger. If we had more time pass in between, the trigger could simply stay missed, but based on the fact that we immediately realized it, Nick would have the choice of whether to have the trigger resolve now or just stay missed. Alright, so next up, while shuffling Nick's deck before game 1 of their match, Amy accidentally drops a card and it lands face up on the table. What is the appropriate penalty to assess? So I'll give you a spoiler. The correct infraction is, in this case, looking at extra cards. The question doesn't ask about that, but that's what it is. So the correct penalty for looking at extra cards is a warning. Since Amy is the one who actually physically committed this infraction, she's the one that would get a warning. Now, the other thing people sometimes wonder about is, well, what's the fix? Right? So, like, Amy committed this infraction. She looked at a card she wasn't able to see. I'm not the Men in Black, right? Like, I got a black shirt, but I'm not the Men in Black. I don't have, like, the neuralizer where I can, like, flashy finger and like, Amy forgets what card she saw. Nobody can do that. It is sad but true. There's not a satisfying way to resolve this, but Amy did get some extra information. Like we said, we used the word accidentally here, and we're assuming that means she really did accidentally do it. Again, in, like, a real situation, you would have to investigate to determine that was the case. But yeah, given that she accidentally dropped a card, that's what the penalty is, and that's what the fix would be. The fix would just be you shuffle the card back in, and unfortunately, Amy gets some extra information this match. During a deck check, you find that Amy has registered 4 Jace on her deck list. Now, after talking to the head judge, you agree that there are other Jace Planeswalkers in the format, but the only one that ever sees play is Jace the Mind Sculptor. This is the card that we see Amy is playing in that slot when you do the deck check. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? And so for this one here, the correct infraction is a deck list problem. Amy's deck list does not have the detail necessary to uniquely describe all the cards that she's playing, and that is one of the things that you need to do for your deck list. It is a fact that Jace the Mind Sculptor is better than all, and that's probably the card that Amy is playing. But you know what? People play stupid cards all the time. Sometimes they don't have enough money to buy the stupidly broken cards, so they have to play something a little bit less well known. Sometimes they are trying to make a meme deck, and sometimes they just genuinely think that Jace the Mind Sculptor is going to be on the bench this time. So there is no way we can know from just Amy's deck list which Jace she is playing. And because of that ambiguity, she does get a game loss. The higher penalty is warranted in this case. And this is one of a handful of ways that are still able to get a game loss at competitive rel. But yeah, we're going to change your deck list so it says Jace the Mind Sculptor instead of just Jace, so that's not a problem in the future. but she will be getting a game loss for a decklist problem in this case. And you know, if anybody picked the option E here, you know, let's talk about judging a tournament together, because I think that'd be pretty funny. Sometimes I feel like it would be you know, kind of cool if judges had the authority to do stuff like that, but unfortunately no. Amy controls 3 islands and 2 planes. During her pre-combat main phase, she played a Day of Judgment, but she accidentally tapped 3 of the islands and 1 of the planes to do this. Which of the following are policy-supported fixes that a judge could consider for this infraction? Choose all that apply. And so, of course, choose all that apply means that you may have 1 or more of these being the correct answer. And to get credit for this question being right, you would need to identify all of the correct answers. And so for that one, we're going to talk. The first thing we do is identify what the correct infraction is. And this infraction would be an example of a game rule violation. Amy broke the rules. She cast Day of Judgment with lands that were not able to produce the mana required to cast this spell. So that is against the rules. One of the things, the question doesn't ask about this, but the penalty for that is a warning generally. Depending on when this happened and like how far, how much time has passed in game, Nick may or may not also be getting a penalty called failure to maintain game state, and that also comes with a warning for basically like letting his opponent do something that was against the rules and not stopping them, right? So that's a thing that can happen. And again, that is based on whether the judge believes a sufficient amount of time has passed that Nick should have been able to realize that an infraction had occurred. Now, speaking of you know, how much time has passed, that's what's going to make the difference between. So, in general, with a game rule violation, the normal thing, normal circumstances is there's 2 types of fixes. You could either leave the game state as is, or you can back up to the point of the error. And that is the 2 fixes that are the correct answer for this question. All right. Amy attacks with a grizzly bears. While determining how he wants to block, Nick realizes that he exiled Obsidat Ghost Council 3 turns ago, but he forgot to return it to the battlefield. After investigating, the judge determines this was an honest mistake and both players actually forgot about Obsidat up until this point. What is the appropriate fix? And so, okay, first thing, it's a missed trigger. The thing that returns Obsidat to the battlefield is a triggered ability. Nick would not be getting a warning because you don't get warnings for triggers that are generally considered to be not detrimental to you, as we discussed in the Dark Confidant example. Now, the fix is kind of interesting, right? With the Dark Confidant example, we said that if the triggered ability happened like too far ago, and 3 turns is, you know, it's usually 1 turn is like that's the threshold. But like stuff that happened 3 turns ago is normally just lost forever. It's just gone. But like that's super duper punishing if like we forgot to return the Obsidat and we forgot to return it, so now it's gone forever. Sorry Nick. And so out of recognition for the fact certain triggered abilities, including ones like Obsidat, have no expiration date. You could remember it 100 turns in the future somehow. And if you did, you would still get your Obsidat back. So the only, you know, out of recognition for Amy, she does get to choose whether she wants to put that ability on the stack now and have it resolved now or at the beginning of the next phase. Because that way, if Amy is able to, you know, if Amy attacks thinking that the Obsidat's not in play and then, like, Nick ninjas the Obsidat back into play, that'd be kind of like, you know, not a great resolution. So that's the reason why Amy gets the choice, and so the correct answer is answer choice E. All right. So while drawing her opening hand for game 1, Amy accidentally draws 8 cards. What is the appropriate fix? So again, we'll first talk about the correct infraction to assess. Because this happened during the opening hand and not like during the gameplay, this is not a hidden card error. This is a Mulligan procedure error. Because, and that's true even if it's like Amy's first opening hand or if she did it while taking a Mulligan. Either way, it still counts. Now, the correct penalty for that is a warning. And the fix, there's one fix that's specified: Amy takes a Mulligan. And that's it. That's the answer. For mulligan procedure errors like that, you take an extra mulligan. So if Amy is like that, if that's Amy's first opening hand, then she goes to, she's taking mulligan down to 6, whether she wants to or not. If she's already at 6, then she's going down to 5, and so on. Okay. Next up, Amy is drawing a card for turn. Her sleeves stick together, and she sees the next card also. She calls for a judge before either card touches the other cards in her hand. Before this happened, neither player knew the position of any card in Amy's library. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? Okay, so first the infraction. This is a looking at extra cards. Hidden card error is a infraction that happens if someone does something that cannot be corrected using information that's available to both players. But in this case, Amy has looked at extra cards, but she has not put the extra cards in her hand yet. And so it's therefore legal, legally it's not considered a hidden card error yet. It's still looking at extra cards. The penalty is a warning. And the fix is for hidden card for hidden card error. It's different. For looking at extra cards, you would have you shuffle them into the library and draw a new card. The part about no player knows the position of any cards in Amy's library. If they did, for example, if Amy had scried stuff to the bottom or took a mulligan or something. If Amy knew what the position of cards in her library was, those cards would stay the same. And the same thing is true for Nick. Those cards would stay in the same positions, and then the rest of the library would get shuffled. Amy draws for turn, and then her friend walks by and greets Amy, wishing her good luck in her match. Distracted, Amy accidentally draws for turn again, and then calls a judge after looking at her hand and realizes she has 2 new cards. What is the appropriate infraction, penalty, and fix? So the penalty is a warning. The infraction is different. Remember, what we said before, if you just look at the extra cards, that's looking at extra cards. If the extra cards get into a position where nobody knows which cards that you looked at, such as, for example, in your hand, once they're in your hand, nobody except for you knows which cards are the extra cards, and therefore you cannot fix this mistake with just publicly available information. And so now we have crossed into hidden card error territory here. And the appropriate fix for that one is that Nick chooses a card from her hand and that card gets shuffled into her library. And again, this is the same caveat, the same asterisk. If the position of any cards is known, those cards would stay in those positions, and otherwise you'd shuffle the whole library. All right, Amy attacks with a creature. While deciding how to block, Nick realizes he didn't untap one of his creatures last turn because Amy had threatened it. The judge concludes both players genuinely forgot about untapping it because it was separated from Nick's other creatures while he was untapping. What is the appropriate fix? And with this question, the first thing we need to do is decide what the appropriate infraction is. And the answer this time is a game rule violation. Okay, Nick has committed a game rule violation because he did not untap his permanent. In other words, he did not follow the rules of the game that said that he had to untap all this stuff at the beginning of his turn. Amy should have noticed this, but did not. Because of that, Amy would be getting a failure to maintain game state, which we talked about before. And now the fix. The fix is kind of an interesting one. If you remember, with the Day of Judgment question, there was 2 normal alternatives that the judge considers, which is leaving the game state as is and backing up to the point of the error. Neither one of those is super great in this situation. But there is a third option. The third option is sometimes you get a partial fix. And if you remember the situation with the Day of Judgment thing where I told you, that the answer choice where you could tap a plains and untap one of the islands, that's something that people wish they could do a lot, right? We know what they meant to do. Let's just fix it. For various reasons, you can talk with your judge mentors about some of the philosophy behind that, or I talk about in some of my other videos. For various reasons, partial fixes are they only exist for certain stuff. And one of the things they do exist for is if you forgot to untap. Unfortunately, you only are able to use that partial fix if you forgot to untap that turn. Once it's past that turn, that partial fix no longer applies. So we have only two possible fixes, which is leave the game state as is and back up to Nick's untap step. No judge, I know, is going to untap through Amy attacking and 2 draw steps in order to untap a permanent. Like that's pretty not realistic. And so the best fix would be to just leave game state as is. Amy says, go to combat. Nick replies, sure. Amy then taps a planes and says she's going to animate Mutavault and attack with it. Nick says she cannot do this and calls for a judge. Which of these best describes what step the game is in and whether Amy can animate her Mutavault? And so with this one, I did do a whole video about this. It's the combat shortcut video. You can take that out for full explanation. But the way it works is if you say go to combat, you're going to the beginning of combat step, and you do have an opportunity to animate the Mutavault and attack with it this turn. That's just the default assumptions that the game has, the game rules has. And again, you can check out that video if you want a fuller explanation, including the philosophy behind that. All right, Amy and Nick are playing in the top 8 of an RCQ. Amy has a higher seed and therefore chose to play first in game 1. That game is a draw, and one player drew the game by casting a squall line for a value of X greater than both players' life totals. Who plays first in game 2? And you might have noticed there's an extra answer choice here. I realized something. You know, the standard is for there to be 5 answer choices. But guess what? I'm writing this exam. I can put as many answer choices as I want. And you know what? You guys are lucky that it's not fill in the blank. Because guess what? When you're a judge doing an actual call in an actual game, there's no word bank. Let's put it that way. You gotta figure this stuff out for yourself. So yeah, what do you think? And the correct answer is Amy would be the one to choose who plays first. Again, this is just a trivia question. There's no way you could figure this out. You would have to know it somehow. And the way it works is if the players draw, then when they start their next game, whoever had the choice of whether to play or draw first in the drawn game has that same choice in the new game. And that's how it works. So Amy had that choice, so she is the one who chooses whether to play or draw first. And finally, the last question. In a 2-headed giant event, time is called. After the players finish their current turn, how many turns do the players have before the game is determined to draw? And you know what? I decided to put in a fill in the blank. What could I say? Hey, okay, I'll give you a hint. It's between 0 and 10. There you go. So go ahead and think about it, and I will reveal the answer in 3, 2, 1, go. Again, this is a trivia question. It's straight up trivia. You could not know the answer to this one unless you already knew it somehow. I don't really like trivia questions, but they have them in the exams, so I got them on the practice exam. This one has a special place in my heart because this question, this actual question, was on my level 1 exam and my level 2 exam. So this is a real, this is a real question that people actually have got on their exams, level 1 and level 2, both. So it's a, close question to my heart. And so it is 3 turns. I think the answer choices they gave me for that was 1 to 5. So yeah, if this shows up for you, you know the answer now. It's important to know in 2-headed giant, I guess. Those 2 extra turns would be, the rounds would take go over time by 2 hours instead of just 1 hour every time. So yeah, that's the reason why it's 3 instead of 5. Could have been 0. But that's the answer, and that is it. That is all of the questions that I prepared for you. How did you do? And like I said in the other video, I don't think you should be really concentrating on what actual score you got. I think it's more important to think about how confident you were in your answers and how many of the questions you had good confident answers versus when you're actually taking a call. That's what players expect. The players expect that you're going to confidently answer the question, and so those situations that I talked about, those aren't trivia, cases that you have to memorize for the most part. Most of those are real questions that really come up in real Magic tournaments, and I think it's important for people to know the answer to them. If you didn't do as good as you hoped, I got a whole playlist that's just policy and philosophy questions that you can use to bone up your knowledge. But that is all of the that is all I have for you for DDR number 1000, and I split it up into 2 videos because I really wanted to like savor for this. It's a big moment for me and for my channel, and I hope all of the rest of you had as much fun of a time following along with me as I did. That is all I have for you today. Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.